The Trickster. I quite love the Trickster, but not in the way that you might think. I really just love how the Trickster weaves in and out of our culture, our stories, even our day-to-day television series are not without their fair share of tricksters. They are an important archetype in history. They're most often portrayed as males. However, my favorite female trickster is Kitsune, the Japanese fox trickster. But that is a story for another day. Trickster is a god, yet not quite. A wise fool. It is he, through his creations that destroy. He points out the very flaws in our carefully constructed society of man. The trickster rebels against authority, pokes fun at the overly serious. I know, because I have been overly serious, and I certainly have met trickster living in the South. So I am aware that they are make me laugh and help me rebel against my own inner construct and my own sense of authority. And sometimes I am a wise fool as well. However, I digress, and that's not part of the story. So the trickster plays with the laws of the universe, and sometimes, believe it or not, is his own worst enemy, and not accept things blindly. He appears when a way of thinking becomes outmoded and needs to be torn down to be built anew. The destroyer of worlds, and at the same time, the savior of us all. The trickster lives inside and outside of time, of our world, yet not of our world. So our laws do not apply. Creator, joker, truth teller, storyteller, liar, transformer linked to spiritual frequencies. It's a teacher. It attracts us to life lessons. Who isn't caught by the wise fool? Who isn't caught by the storyteller and caught up? Who isn't trying to break out of the constructs of our own consciousness? Our lesson then is to awaken to who we are. That's the lesson of the trickster, allowing us to explore the true purpose, or one of the purposes of our soul's journeys, attempting to bring our lessons into ourselves, our conscious dial-a-day reality, integrating them while experiencing it consciously and with awareness. Trickster breaks us out of our old stereotypes, whether they've been imposed by us, like I spoke of earlier, or sometimes our families, our culture, the overculture, or circumstance. It is the energy of the trickster that opens the world at kind of limitless possibilities. So think of the raven who stole the sun. That kind of created limitless possibilities for the people on earth. So it behooves us all to work with that before it destroys us. So give in to the raven as it returns the sun, or give in to the kitsune so that your sanity is brought back. To touch the trickster as the trickster touches us. So in many stories, the trickster is a teacher. Certainly a survivor. Wile E. Coyote, how many times has that little hero been around? Sometimes the trickster is a traveler, often outrageous. Some of the stories that you read about, the big stories that the tricksters tell, you're like, oh my gosh, these are outrageous tales. They're often very cunning. They're foolish and wise or mischievous. And even despite themselves, they often end up doing good. So the trickster, in a sense, is a metaphor for the evolution of consciousness, that delving into the darker aspects, that coming out of self, that, that foolish, where is the shadow? Where is the shadow? Oftentimes the trickster is the shaman, and in some references it's the false shaman. The trickster works in the land of the liminal, the sensory threshold, barely perceptible, such as the trance states, that we enter when we journey, when all of our senses awaken to perceive the world. So Carl Jung, the trickster archetype, so this is a geek alert, a primitive cosmic being of divine animal nature. On the one hand, superior to man because of his superhuman qualities, and on the other hand, inferior to him because of his unreason and unconsciousness. The more civilized we become, the more we will blame a shadow for our misfortunes. Like the trickster of old, the shadow represents a quality that isn't accepted into the awareness. It can pester us unmercifully, but always has a gift for us, a missing quality, an attitude needed to cope or self-realization. So in mythology, the pranks of the trickster seem almost a compulsion, sometimes unconscious. Tricksters are blessed with curiosity, which often leads them into trouble. With their cunning wit, oftentimes they're able to get out of trouble, and sometimes they're not quite able to get out of trouble. Trickster not only plays the game, but the paradox is they often think they are the one controlling the game. Tricksters come in all forms, all shapes, all sizes, and obviously have many sides. Between January 20th and February 18th, on Sun Bear's medicine wheel, is the rest and the cleansing moon. The animal guardian / representative for this moon is the otter. After winter solstice, in the darkness of winter solstice, it's a good time to examine feelings about sharing the bounty of your life with others. The guardian, the moon moving into Imbolc, February 1st, the 6 weeks between solstice and equinox, may be giving us the opportunity to experience the finer qualities of the feminine, the anima. And this needs to be and can be striven for both in men and women. A unity of spirit is being achieved as the otter is this particular being of femininity and creation. I think this time after winter solstice, this time of the resting cleansing moon, also gives us the opportunity to involve ourselves in the destruction of jealousy and all of the acts of anger which stem from that fear. This would mean a world of people coming together to honor the right of each person just to be. During the time of the wheel and the northeast, we are in the in-between zone. This is what I call the blind spot. Well, lots of people call things blind spots. For me, where I see my blind spot is in the northeast of the medicine wheel. Blind spot can and is understood to be something to be wary of. One of the ways I enable people and myself to search the blind spot is I look for inner treasures or talents, faithfulness, the trust between my spirit kin and myself. With Otter, is there some sort of hidden guidance there to aid me in my uncovering talents, psychic or physical, within myself? Otter, in that sense, during this time of the year, is reminding us to move gently into the river of life, flow with the universe. And this is the balanced way of the feminine receptive energy and the masculine yang active energy. So we flow with it. And in doing so, you discover the power of your own femininity, your own anima. But One of the tricky aspects of coming out of the dark is disengaging from the dark and the lure of its allowed or allowable behaviors. Nature provides us with many examples of multiplicity of sides and behavior. For me, again, the blind spot is in the northeast. The place on the wheel to me is a place of transition between darkness and light. Shadows are tempted by the many shades of gray. And during this time of the wheel cycle, they can move between the worlds with greater ease. And the otter moon is smack dab in the blind spot. So what do we have here? Well, let me tell you a story. The otter has been a symbol of shamanism in ritual and art from the north coast of Alaska, the Haida Islands, coast of BC, all the way down, even down into Peru. We have folklore of the river otter. The otter has long been considered a creature. Its hide is very often used to make medicine bags for powerful women. It represents, again, that balanced feminine energy, that balanced anima, that balance between going with the flow of the river, the flow of the water. We seem most accessible to the synchronistic gifts or tricks of the trickster when we ourselves are at or near boundaries, or we're experiencing transition states, such as journeys, such as meditation. Personal growth in this time seems only to facilitate this synchronicity, but to turn it into what? Because we're experiencing a transition state, we're near a boundary, we're working with the trickster, and so what does the trickster in this moon teach us, right? So I think at this time we experience more synchronicities, or we can find more synchronicities because we're in this time of shadow. So when we are moving into the vulnerable places, whether we're working with medicines, whether we're working with journey states, whether we're working with patience, whether we're simply working for the sole benefit of healing our own incredible divine self, we're going to experience synchronicities. And the trickster, the archetype of the trickster within ourselves, is that boundary dweller. It finds expression, we find expression through our imagination. The trickster of us, the trickster in story, the trickster in the Jung's analysis of the human expression, in imagination and in experience. So the thinking of it and the integration of it, the thinking of it, the imagination, the experience, the bringing into body, bringing into mind. So connecting the four aspects. And that in that boundary we have expression of self. The Tlingit, Temiskaming, and the Haida are the First Nations people for our Pacific Northwest coast. I have long been an admirer of their stories, of their ways, of their beautiful, beautiful art and their connection to their spirits. I have much love and much respect for the Tlingit, the Temiskaming, and the Haida peoples. They have a relationship with otter shapeshifter. The otter shapeshifter is referred to as land otter people. This is their trickster. This species is referred to as land otter people. This is their trickster. This species of the otter is lured. It's rumored. It says, it's a shapeshifter. It's something that is kind of like, kind of feared in a way, because it's said that it's going to lure people, unsuspecting people, from their homes in order to turn them into hushtakas. What this means in their folklore, in the Tlingit folklore, is that prevents this human being, your mother, your brother, your sister, your cousin, a part of your tribe, from achieving reincarnation, and hence that consequence everlasting life if you are caught by the trickster, if you are caught by the shapeshifter otter, the kushtaka. Now the land otter was just as comfortable on land as it was in the water. So this became that in the down below world of the spiritual world, the water world. In our Western mind, I can often see us saying, yes, I can see how this would have been. We have examples of sea otters off the coast of Alaska that were 7 feet long. In the late 1700s, Russia had an incredible desire for these pelts, and this led to a very quick and irreparable extinction of that particular sea otter. Our minds say it looked human, and therefore it is incorporated into story to share a lesson or a warning. That would be the Western mind. That would be, this mind. But a mind which holds no boundaries between the worlds, no spirits can change, morph, and take another shape, as is the role of the trickster. So in relationship to the land, the ancestors of the Northwest Coast, they knew of the ability of spirit to be absolutely anything. They remembered it was important to respect the being of all things and keep harmony in the environment. Proper respect always had to be shown, for all words were heard in the omnipresent spirit world. The ancestors of the Northwest Coast, the Tlingit, the Temiskaming, the Haida, they knew spirits were good and evil. They believed in reincarnation, the transmigration of spirit, both humans and animals. Everything else, aside from the humans and the animals, had an indwelling spirit, and not necessarily a soul that was capable of reincarnation. Souls could be animals or human. Death was not feared because they would be reborn within the same clan, unless they're still stolen or prevented from reincarnating or missing their spot in the clan. When they die, in the Tlingit, Temiskaming, the people with the land and the rivers and the waters, they don't die, they cross a river or they cross a lake. So there are references of he died as he went across. The dead had to be properly cared for or their souls could not return. And this is a story, this is a part of the tradition of people living within a clan. We have this in a very washed version of our funerals. However, I digress. Being properly cared for helps the soul to return. I once had an experience where I went to the Charles Council Hospital. This is before it had the fences around it. And in the shamanic journey that I was doing on the land, I met a native spirit who couldn't cross over, and he couldn't cross over because he hadn't been sung his songs. And when his soul was born, his soul had the understanding that he would be sung into the spirit world. And because he died there, no one sung his home. And because no one told his family he died, they didn't sing him home. The dead are properly cared for or their souls cannot return. When the fisherman is taken in the water and not returned, they could be taken by the kushtakas. They could be taken by the land otter people, those who are comfortable in water and on land. Our ancestors, their bodies had to be cremated because the body had to be warmed up to be released to the spirit world. I love that. The transition is that of fire, the ultimate of being warmed up. And we see that also in other traditions where the body is burned and the body is cremated. But I love the term of warmed up. The body was held in sacred space for 8 days. And at the right time within that, person wishing to have the return of the soul of the dead person would walk around the crematory fire 8 times, calling the person's name. And after 8 rounds, she would walk away, careful not to look back, because she didn't want to disturb the soul. She would walk to whatever was the end of the path, squat, and urinate. It was believed that urine would repel the kushtakas. If a victim drowned, the dead had to live forever with the underworld spirits. The kushtakas deprived the victim of a return to the tribe, living forever. And as legends grew, the land otter became the fodder of stories for the boogeyman, but it was far more than that. The otter was seen to save the soul, to capture those who drowned or were lost in the woods. The souls were taken to the soul to capture those who drowned or were lost in the woods. The souls were taken to the homes and the dens of the land otters. And there they stayed until or unless the shaman rescued them. And the soul didn't turn into a land otter immediately. It took time. So there was time to rescue the soul. True to Trickster's form, the kushtaka can also appear as relatives to confuse that wandering human or that wandering spirit. But they were also known to help get the humans home by appearing as relatives and by giving them home. 2 sides, good and evil, ever true the shape shifter. Despite the fact that the kushtakas were considered evil, it is not unlikely that they would be overwhelmingly regarded with a certain level of trepidation. Now, there are instances of benevolent behavior, as we talked about above, on the part of the land otter. But while we are generally credited with merrily tricking Tlingit sailors further offshore to die by imitating the cries of an infant or screams of a woman, to lure hapless victims into rivers or preying upon small children, there is, again, the occasional tale of the kushtaka saving lost individuals from freezing to death in the deeply wooded wilderness or in the freezing ocean by conveniently transforming them into kushtakas. Therefore, with the kushtakas, to live between the worlds, inside and outside of time, never to be able to fully die, to reincarnate, of our world, not yet of our world. So again, our laws do not apply. And yet, being an unknown being of an unknown lifespan with a mysterious existence, this is where the trickster lives, unless, of course, that soul was rescued by the shaman. Shamans of the Tlingit, as part of their initiation, would go into nature for 1 month, even up to 1 year. I have no idea what their initiation ceremonies are like. I have read accounts of the shamans torturing himself. Again, most of the shamans were men, but not all. And many of them were hoping to find the animal spirit who would assist him. And among the Tlingit, they would hope for the otter, so that they could cut out his tongue, for it is said that the tongue of the otter was able to hold the whole secret of shamanism. The tongue. I am very curious what the ancestors of the northwest coast Tlingit Haida and Temiskaming would say about the mysterious reason of the tongue. I can speculate using both my shamanic eye and my Western eye. However, I am so far removed from the rich cultural heritage that I cannot speculate the shaman's pursuit of the tongue. It has taken me years to understand the symbols that I've been given, because I was not given the woven basket of historical knowledge to fully carry it and comprehend it. So I can speculate on the reason of tongue, but without my ancestors' knowledge, I will truly never know. Whether Sun Bear knew of this side of the otter, the shadowy trickster, I'll never know. I, however, am glad the story found me. I am happy to share this with you. The land otter people truly seem to be an animal guardian / representative of the shadowy northeast moon, the blind spot on the wheel. This place of transition between gray. The wheel turns on and moves between the worlds with greater ease. This is the shadowy place of never dead and never alive, the place of the shadowy Hushtaka. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to sharing more thoughts on moons and power animals and aspects of the medicine wheel and the experience of the physical world around us as we continue on our journey, understanding and exploring the world of myth, shamanism, storytelling, Jung, and the ability to share thoughts and ideas. I bid you adieu. Back to you, Doug.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this 31st episode of the Shaman's Way podcast. If you are enjoying this and you think others might as well and would like to help us reach those folks who would benefit from listening to this, please do leave us a rating and a comment on iTunes or whichever podcast player you happen to be listening to us. And otherwise, we look forward to talking to you in a couple of weeks.
Hey.